Yeah.
Because no matter where you are in life and where you find yourself, whether it's in relationship with your spouse, like in my case, I've been married 39 years, my beautiful wife. My beautiful wife looks like all of you, believe it or not. She is very dark. She's from the island of Tonga in the South Pacific. And we met on a blind date. And after 1 month, we got married. One thing that we've learned in our relationship is this. When there is conflict, it needs to be healthy. And the reason why it's healthy is because of this. We don't come into the conflict to say, I'm right, you're wrong. Because the moment you do that, you shut the door for restoration. What we do is, when we have a conflict, we come from the heart as, I want that person that I'm in conflict with to be fully redeemed. Because how many know that God had a conflict with Israel, but he wanted his people redeemed? That's right. Because if you don't want people redeemed, then you should engage in conflict with them. Because you don't want the best for them. And so I had an interesting situation that happened to me in ministry, probably the most difficult thing that I have ever done or gone through in ministry. I've been traveling all over the world, predominantly in the United States, for the last 28 years. And we planted a church in 2021, and while we're still traveling, I have someone that runs it while we're away. But during this season, it was just a few months ago that I had this particular conflict. Because no one in this room wants to have conflict. And sometimes what happens is, when you have conflict, we have a tendency to draw back. We don't want to engage because the conflict that we're having is so awkward. Yeah. But that doesn't solve the problem. Yeah. And so, because I know something, conflict will bring you to your knees quicker than anything. Come on. And God uses conflict to shape us. And it was with leadership. And so, what I did is it drove me to my knees. It drove me to prayer because I needed the voice of God. I didn't need my emotions. Because sometimes what we do when we allow our emotions to violate our values. So I was before the Lord regarding this particular conflict, and the Lord said this to me. He said, John, people make a covenant with the conflict.
Come on.
And never find a solution. I don't make a covenant with the conflict that I'm having. I'm in covenant with God, and I'm in covenant with you. Are you hearing me? But let's take some biblical examples. I know I don't have a lot of time this morning, so I'm going to be as precise and as quick as I can. But think about this just in one particular case, and then I'll turn to the text. That Joseph, the life of Joseph, is about a man shaped by conflict. But how does he redeem his brothers? Because God wants to redeem South Africa. God wants to redeem families. God wants to redeem churches. Come on. God wants to redeem nations. Some of you are going to be raised up to touch nations, and God's going to use you to redeem nations. Redeem tribes, redeem people groups, redeem families. That's what this gospel is about, redemption. And if Joseph did not have that conflict, it would have never shaped him to become the man that God had called him to be. But here's what happens many times. Because you all know that this man Joseph ends up in prison for doing something he didn't do. Just like somebody I know by the name of Nelson Mandela. what separates him from all the rest. When he was in prison for something he didn't do, he did not stop serving. Because anybody can serve when it's nice or good or when you're in a good environment. But how about serving when you're in a prison?
Yeah.
How about serving in a place where it's difficult? How about serving in a place when it's hard? Come on. Because he could have just shut down and said, I don't want to serve because every time I open my mouth, I get in trouble. But he decided to use his gift even in the prison. And I want to encourage you, be a person of covenant. Don't allow the conflict to shut you down. Don't allow life itself to keep you from using the gift that God has given you. And by using that gift that God gave him, it opened the door for the cupbearer to come in. And that prophetic gift that Joseph had to interpret dreams was the very gift that launched him out of prison into the palace. And some of you, if you'll use your gift with the right heart, what God will do is God will send you on a trajectory further than you could ever imagine. Because he continued to serve. Because if you can't serve where you're at now, how are you going to serve where God wants to take you? But interesting, something happened. That when Joseph interprets the dream, he gets forgotten. That God doesn't forget. So what God does is God puts Pharaoh to sleep. And when God puts Pharaoh to sleep, nobody in all of Egypt can interpret the dream. But then the cupbearer remembers there was somebody from South Africa. There was somebody from the house of the Lord. Come on. There was somebody from the house. Come on. There's somebody that you don't know, but I know he hears from the voice of God. Cupbearers aren't supposed to talk. They're just supposed to sit and make sure that the king doesn't drink the poison. But the need of the king, the trouble of the king, demanded the cupbearer open his mouth so that the cupbearer would share a testimony about what Joseph had done. Some of you in this room are building testimonies. Where you don't have to open your mouth and broadcast it. God himself will cause other people to tell of the anointing on your life and the grace on your life. Come on. Well, there's a lot in it today. Again, I don't have time to unpack it all. But I will tell you this. Pharaoh got to the end of his rope. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat, he was troubled. And guess what happened? Pharaoh ordered that he would profit out of prison. Let me just say this because I'm getting it down low right now. Place where it's difficult and God's going to raise you up. Then what happens? He said that he's a Hebrew. Everybody say he's a Hebrew.
He's a Hebrew.
But you have to understand something. The Egyptians didn't like Hebrews. They were racist. Let me just tell you something. When we get a reputation, when people hear that and know that we know the voice of God, they don't care what color we are. He says something that's very, very profound. Here Joseph is standing before Pharaoh, who in essence, in some ways, Pharaoh has Joseph's life in the palm of his hand. And Pharaoh says this to Joseph and says, I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can't interpret it. I'm preaching even over the screen, over a company of men and women that are dreamers. But it's one thing to get a dream, it's another thing to have a strategy how to get there. And Pharaoh said, I heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can't interpret it. Now, for a moment, let's put ourselves in Joseph's shoes. This man can free you from your prison cell. This man can change your economic status. He can do so much for you. But what I love about Joseph is because now the ball is in Joseph's court. The Hebrew prisoner now has a humility. We will use the opportunity for our own gain.
Yeah. Come on. Come on.
Because Joseph could have said, well, since I'm the prophet, or I'm the dream interpreter, I'm the one that can interpret dreams, you know what? Here's what I'll do, Pharaoh. You know what? I'll interpret dreams if you get me out of prison. You give me restitution for all the years I've suffered. You put Potiphar's wife in prison, and you killed my brothers. Joseph didn't say that.
Right? Come on. Come on.
You know what I'm saying?
That's good. That's good.
He says, I can't. Everybody say, I can't.
I can't.
Can I tell you, I want that posture. God, I can't. In other words, in my own strength, I can't. In my own ability, I can't. My own giftedness, my own looks, my own charisma, my own personality, I can't. And my own education, my own financial status, I can't. Say, I can't. But then, in that same sentence, he said, I can't, but God will.
Come on. Yes.
And Joseph spoke. Not only interpreted, but gave Pharaoh the strategy to save the world. This prophecy that you're watching on the screen has a destiny and a future for you to save somebody. But I said all this to say this. It really wasn't about Egypt.
No.
And it really wasn't about Pharaoh. It really was about covenant. That God made between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because when Joseph arrived as the prime minister of Egypt, he understood his real calling. Not just to do humanitarian aid to the world. That's a good thing. We should do that. His real calling was to redeem his brothers.
That's good. That's good, John.
And when the famine got so severe, Jacob turns to his sons and says, I hear that there's grain in South Africa. Oh, come on. There's grain in the house. There's grain in the house. There's food in the house. My time's getting away. I've got 30 seconds. What Joseph did when his brothers came. They didn't recognize him, but he recognized them. I'm not in the position that I'm in, so I can move you. I'm in a position so I can serve you. Because I can tell you. Give God a shout of praise right now.